We often look at wealth as something that comes from outside through effort, luck, or opportunity. We chase it, compare it, measure it, and sometimes fear losing it. But if you observe carefully, you will notice that wealth is not only a material condition, it is also a reflection of inner causes. Everything that arises in life follows a law of cause and effect. Nothing appears without a seed, and nothing grows without conditions. In the same way, abundance does not arrive randomly. It flows from the quality of actions, intentions, and awareness that we cultivate over time. If a person gathers wealth through greed, deception, or harm, they may hold it for a while, but the mind becomes restless, guarded, and heavy. Such wealth carries suffering within it. But when wealth is built through honesty, generosity, and mindful effort, it brings not only comfort but also peace. The outer result may look similar, but the inner experience is completely different. True abundance begins in the mind. A mind that is always dissatisfied will feel poor even when surrounded by riches. A mind that understands contentment will feel rich even with little. This does not mean one should reject material success. Rather, it means that material success alone is incomplete without inner balance. There is a simple truth: what you give shapes what you receive. When you act with generosity, you plant seeds of abundance. When you act with kindness, you create conditions for support and trust. When you act with awareness, you avoid creating suffering for yourself and others. These are the unseen roots from which lasting prosperity grows. Attachment, however, turns wealth into a burden. When you cling tightly to possessions, fear naturally follows the fear of loss, change, or insufficiency. But when you learn to use wealth wisely without being owned by it, it becomes a tool rather than a chain. You begin to see it as something to be shared, managed, and directed toward meaningful purposes. Right livelihood is also essential. The way wealth is earned shapes its energy. Work that harms others, exploits weakness, or feeds suffering will carry consequences even if success appears quickly. Work that contributes, uplifts, and respects life creates harmony both inside and outside. Patience is another part of this path. Just as a seed does not become a tree overnight, the results of actions take time to ripen. Many become discouraged when they do not see immediate rewards, but the law does not fail, it simply unfolds at its own pace. Consistent effort, guided by right intention, will always bear fruit. Gratitude deepens abundance. When you recognize what you already have, your mind shifts from scarcity to sufficiency. This shift changes how you act, how you relate to others, and how opportunities appear in your life. A grateful mind attracts clarity and calm, which are the foundations of wise decisions. So understand this clearly. Wealth is not only about accumulation, but alignment. Alignment between your actions, your values, and your awareness. When these are in harmony, abundance flows naturally, not always in the form you expect, but always in a way that supports a meaningful life. Do not chase wealth blindly. Instead, cultivate the causes that lead to it. Act with integrity. Give without fear. Work with purpose. Remain aware. And most importantly, free your mind from attachment. When the mind is free, even simple things feel abundant. And when the mind is wise, even great wealth cannot disturb your peace. Wealth follows the law of cause and effect. Abundance is not random, it is the result of past actions, intentions, and habits. What you do consistently shapes what you receive. Wealth does not appear by accident, nor does it stay without reason. Everything that comes into one's life follows a quiet and steady law, the law of cause and effect. Just as a seed planted in fertile soil will grow when given water, sunlight, and time, the conditions you create through your thoughts, words, and actions gradually shape the kind of abundance you experience. If you look closely, you will see that what you receive today is often the echo of what you have given before. Many people believe that wealth is the result of luck or sudden opportunity, but this view is incomplete. Luck itself is often the meeting point of preparation and past action. When a person acts with discipline, patience, and awareness, they are quietly laying the foundation for future success. Even if results are not immediate, the causes are already in motion. In the same way, when actions are careless, harmful, or driven by greed, they plant seeds that may later grow into difficulty or loss. Intention plays a powerful role in this process. Two people may perform the same action, yet the results they experience can be very different because the intention behind the action shapes its deeper effect. When wealth is pursued with clarity, honesty, and a sense of contribution, it carries a different energy than wealth pursued through manipulation or selfish desire. One creates stability and trust, while the other creates tension and fear, even if the outer results seem similar at first. It is also important to understand that causes do not always produce results instantly. Just as a tree takes time to grow from a seed, the fruits of your actions may appear slowly. This delay often leads to doubt, causing people to abandon good actions or continue harmful ones because the consequences are not yet visible. But the law does not forget. Every action leaves an imprint, and given the right conditions, it will eventually bear fruit. Patience, therefore, is not weakness, it is wisdom. Awareness allows you to observe this law in your own life. When you begin to notice the connection between your actions and your outcomes, you gain the power to choose differently. Instead of reacting blindly, you act with understanding. You begin to see that generosity invites support, honesty builds lasting relationships, and mindful effort creates sustainable growth. These are not beliefs to accept blindly, but truths to observe directly through experience. In this way, wealth becomes more than just an external achievement. It becomes a reflection of inner alignment. When your actions are rooted in clarity and your intentions are free from harm, the results you experience begin to change. You are no longer chasing wealth as something separate from yourself. Instead, you are cultivating the very conditions from which it naturally arises. Inner state defines true richness. A dissatisfied mind feels poor even with money, while a content mind feels abundant even with little. Real wealth begins within. What you experience as wealth is deeply shaped by the condition of your own mind. Two people may stand in the same place, possess the same resources, and live under the same circumstances, yet one feels abundance while the other feels lack. This difference does not come from what they have, but from how they see. The mind, when clouded by constant desire and comparison, creates a sense of insufficiency that no amount of material gain can satisfy. When the mind is restless, it is always looking outward, measuring itself against others, chasing what is not yet attained, and overlooking what is already present. In this state, even success feels incomplete. There is always something more to achieve, something better to own, or someone else who seems ahead. This endless cycle of craving turns wealth into a moving target, forever just out of reach. The more one grasps, the more distant satisfaction becomes. But when the mind learns contentment, a quiet shift begins to take place. Contentment does not mean giving up growth or ambition, it means understanding the difference between need and endless desire. It allows a person to appreciate what is already within their life while still moving forward with purpose. In this state, even simple things, a meal, a safe place to rest, meaningful relationships are experienced as forms of richness. The mind is no longer trapped in comparison, and so it becomes lighter and more at ease. Clarity also plays an essential role in this inner wealth. When the mind is clear, it sees things as they are without distortion. It understands that possessions are temporary, that circumstances change, and that clinging to what cannot last only creates suffering. This understanding does not lead to indifference, but to balance. You can enjoy what you have without being controlled by it. You can pursue success without losing your sense of peace. Gratitude strengthens this inner richness. When you regularly recognize what is already present in your life, your attention shifts from scarcity to sufficiency. This shift changes how you act, how you make decisions, and how you relate to others. A grateful mind is less driven by fear and more guided by appreciation. It becomes easier to act wisely, to share with others, and to remain steady even when circumstances are uncertain. In contrast, a mind that lacks awareness remains trapped in illusion. It believes that happiness will arrive only after achieving certain external goals, yet when those goals are reached, the satisfaction fades quickly. Without inner understanding, this pattern repeats again and again, creating exhaustion rather than fulfillment. So true richness is not measured by how much you hold, but by how little you depend on what you hold for your sense of peace. When the mind is balanced, aware, and content, even modest resources feel abundant. And when the mind is untrained, even great wealth can feel like a burden. In this way, the foundation of all abundance is not outside you, but within the way you see, understand, and experience life itself. Right action creates lasting prosperity. Wealth earned through honesty, generosity, and ethical work brings peace, while wealth gained through harm or greed leads to inner unrest. The way wealth is created shapes the way it is experienced. Two paths may lead to similar outcomes on the surface, yet they carry very different consequences within. When actions are rooted in honesty, care, and awareness, the results tend to bring stability and ease. When actions are driven by greed, deception, or disregard for others, they may produce gain for a time, but they also create tension that quietly follows. Consider how trust is built. It does not arise from a single act, but from repeated moments of truthfulness and reliability. When a person earns through fair effort and clear intention, others begin to feel safe in their presence. Opportunities open more naturally, relationships deepen, and support appears without force. This is not something that can be demanded, it grows from consistent right action. Over time, such a foundation becomes a form of wealth in itself, one that cannot be easily taken away. In contrast, when wealth is pursued without regard for its impact, the mind often becomes guarded. There is a need to protect, to hide, or to justify. Even if material success is achieved, there is a subtle unease that remains. One may fear exposure, loss, or the reactions of others. This inner state turns what was gained into a source of pressure rather than peace. It is not the wealth itself that creates this burden, but the way it was obtained. Right action also brings clarity to decision-making. When you are guided by principles rather than impulse, you begin to see long-term effects more clearly. Shortcuts that once seemed appealing lose their attraction because their consequences are understood. Instead of chasing immediate gain, you begin to value sustainability and balance. This approach may seem slower, but it builds something far more enduring. Generosity is another expression of right action. When wealth is shared wisely, it strengthens connection and reduces the sense of separation between oneself and others. Giving does not diminish what you have, it changes your relationship with it. It transforms wealth from something that is merely possessed into something that is actively used for good. This shift brings a quiet satisfaction that accumulation alone cannot provide. It is also important to see that right action is not about perfection. Mistakes will occur, and at times one may act out of habit or confusion. What matters is the willingness to observe, to learn, and to adjust. Each moment offers a chance to choose again, to act with greater awareness than before. Over time, these choices begin to align and a different pattern of living takes shape. In this way, prosperity is not just measured by how much is gained, but by how it is gained and how it is used. When actions are aligned with understanding and care, wealth becomes steady and supportive. It does not disturb the mind, but works in harmony with it. And from this harmony, a deeper sense of well-being naturally grows. Attachment turns wealth into suffering. Clinging to money creates fear and anxiety. Using wealth wisely without attachment turns it into a tool for growth and contribution. Attachment changes the nature of wealth. What could be a source of comfort and support gradually becomes a source of pressure when the mind begins to cling. At first, holding on may feel like control or security, but over time it creates a quiet tension that is always present. The more tightly one grasps, the more fragile everything begins to feel. When the mind becomes attached to possessions, identity starts to form around them. A person may begin to think, this is mine, or even this is me. In that moment, the boundary between self and possession becomes blurred. Any threat to what is owned is then experienced as a threat to the self. This is where fear begins to grow, not because loss has occurred, but because the possibility of loss is constantly imagined. This fear can take many forms. It may appear as anxiety about the future, as constant comparison with others, or as an inability to feel satisfied even when there is more than enough. The mind becomes occupied with protecting, increasing, and defending what it has gathered. Instead of serving life, wealth begins to demand attention and energy. What was meant to provide ease slowly becomes a burden. Yet the nature of all things is change. No possession, no amount of money, no condition remains fixed forever. When this truth is not accepted, attachment becomes stronger because the mind resists what is inevitable. It tries to hold still what is always moving. This resistance creates suffering, not because change is harmful, but because the mind refuses to flow with it. Freedom does not come from rejecting wealth, but from changing the way it is held. When you understand that what you have is temporary, you begin to relate to it differently. You can use it, enjoy it, and benefit from it, but without the need to cling. There is a sense of lightness in this approach. If something increases, there is appreciation. If something decreases, there is acceptance. The mind remains steady in both situations. Using wealth wisely becomes possible when attachment loosens. Instead of hoarding or fearing loss, you begin to see where it can be applied meaningfully, supporting your needs, helping others, or creating opportunities for growth. Wealth becomes a tool, not something that defines your worth or controls your state of mind. Letting go of attachment does not happen all at once. It is a gradual process of observing how the mind reacts, how it holds, and how it fears. Each moment of awareness weakens the grip slightly. You start to notice that peace does not depend on how much you have, but on how you relate to what you have. In this way, the burden begins to lift. Wealth no longer carries the weight of identity or security. It becomes part of life, not the center of it. And when the mind is no longer bound by what it owns, a deeper sense of ease naturally takes its place. Generosity and gratitude attract abundance. Giving freely and appreciating what you have builds the foundation for sustainable prosperity and a balanced, fulfilling life. Generosity and gratitude shape the flow of abundance in ways that are often overlooked. Many believe that holding tightly to what they have will secure their future, yet this habit can quietly create a sense of limitation. When the mind is focused only on keeping and accumulating, it begins to see the world through the lens of scarcity. There is a subtle fear that what is given will not return, and this fear narrows both perception and action. Generosity works in the opposite direction. It opens the mind and softens the sense of separation between oneself and others. When you give, whether it is time, resources, knowledge, or care, you are not simply losing something. You are creating conditions for connection, trust, and mutual support. These conditions often return in unexpected ways, not always in the same form, but in ways that enrich life more deeply than mere accumulation. The act of giving also transforms your relationship with what you have. Instead of seeing wealth as something to guard, you begin to see it as something that can move, serve, and create benefit. This shift reduces fear and brings a quiet confidence. You understand that what you share does not diminish your worth, rather, it strengthens your sense of purpose and balance. Gratitude deepens this process. When you take time to recognize what is already present in your life, the feeling of lack begins to fade. The mind, which once focused on what was missing, starts to rest in what is sufficient. This does not mean ignoring challenges or stopping growth, but it changes the foundation from which you act. Instead of striving from emptiness, you begin to act from fullness. A grateful mind is naturally more attentive and aware. It notices small moments that might otherwise be overlooked: a kind gesture, a simple comfort, an opportunity to learn. These moments, when acknowledged, create a sense of richness that is not dependent on external conditions. Over time, this awareness strengthens, and the need to constantly seek validation through material gain begins to weaken. Generosity and gratitude together create a balance. Gratitude allows you to see the value of what you already have, while generosity allows you to share that value with others. One grounds you and the other expands you. Without gratitude, giving can feel forced or empty. Without generosity, gratitude can become passive. Together, they form a continuous movement that supports both inner and outer well-being. It is important to understand that this is not a transaction. Giving should not be done with the expectation of immediate return, and gratitude should not be practiced as a strategy for gain. When these qualities are genuine, they naturally influence how you live and relate to the world. The results may come in many forms: stronger relationships, clearer thinking, or new opportunities, but they arise as a byproduct, not as a goal. In this way, abundance is no longer something distant or uncertain. It becomes something that is cultivated through daily awareness and action. By appreciating what is present and sharing what is possible, you create a steady flow that supports a more balanced and meaningful life.